Hi guys, this is the third episode of Into the Wilderness. I'd just like to say hello and thank you from the team here at Into the Wilderness Productions. We're in Hillsville. It's a town in the southeast of southern Victoria. Southern Victoria. And we're just on the outskirts of it near Donnelly's Weir. Now, we'll be riding on our bikes today. We'll just be riding around finding places to swim, just showing you how to survive. Now, one thing you'll notice is that we're in different clothes in some of the scenes, and that's because it's been shot on 2 different days. So if you notice difference in weather or difference in our clothing, it's just because it was set on 2 different days. Now we're going to be we have stayed out here at 9. We had the night scene for that, and our shelter that we built, which is a debris shelter. It's getting into the winter months now, so it's going to be pretty cold. So I've been wearing some warm clothes. And another thing about what comes to the winter months is the days are shorter. We have daylight savings here now, so it's going to get dark at a lot earlier, maybe around 6 to 5:30. So we don't have much light as what we did during the summer. Okay, now what we're going to do in the next scene is we're going to show you how to get your bearings when you're out in the bush. Now you're going to need a clock for this. It doesn't matter if it's analog or digital, because we'll show you a way to do it with the digital. Now, as you can see, it isn't very sunny at the moment, but when we did it, it was sunny. So what we did was we got an analog clock, and you line up 12 with the sun. And then what you just do then is you just bisect the time, or bisect between the big hand and the little hand, and that'll give you a direction of west and east line. Now what you do with a digital is that you just find out what the time is, and you draw a clock face on the ground, but with the 12 facing towards the sun, and then you just repeat the same process. Alright, now I'm going to show you another way to find your direction. Now this, you can use an analog clock, but unfortunately I don't have one. So what you do is you get the 12 of your clock, which in this case will be my knife, and you line it up with the sun, and you put it down there, so that will be the 12 on the clock. And you get 2 sticks, and you put them to the time of what it is. And now it's around about 2:30, so we'll do 2:30, and then we just bisect the distance between them. So that way is north and that way is south, roughly. Alright guys, now we're going to show you something that I'm pretty sure I showed you in the last episode, but it's just a helpful tip. Now, if you look here, it's obvious that bushfires come through in the last couple of years, and what it's left behind is these trees all burnt. But this bark, which is all burnt, is charcoal, and it's actually very useful for, well, you can use it to filter water, but also you can put it underneath your eyes, and it stops the sun from getting into your eyes. And yeah, it's just good. You know, you crush it up and you put it over a bit of fabric, and then you pour water through it and it filters it. And that's also just another way to help you get clean water. Alright, now lucky enough for me, I found a river. Now, a river can save your life in a situation like this. Now, to make sure that a river is safe, first of all, you need to just check, obviously, to see if it's clear. Now, looking at this river, it is very clear. Now, if you look up the river, it has rocks. It's sort of like a little waterfall. Now, what those rocks actually do is act as a natural filter for the water, so everything that comes in here should be relatively clean. Now, we need something to hold it in. Luckily enough, I've spotted a piece of litter over there. It is a rubbish bottle. Now, I'm going to have to take off my shoes, because you don't want to get your shoes wet. Now I'm going to have to try and keep my clothes dry, because in a situation like this, you don't want to be walking around in wet clothes and you lose a lot of body heat that way. Now what you do is a trick that I showed you in the first episode, which is where you just tie your shoes together. Throw them over your shoulder, and then you just walk across the river. Now luckily enough for me, it isn't that deep, so I can easily get across without having anything to support me on the way there and back. Now we need to find a lid. And luckily enough, the lid for this bottle is right here. So what I'm going to have to do is just take the risk and use this bottle to fill up my water. Now it's blown up pretty far. Just put in the water, wait for it to fill up. Now, just look at that water, that is crystal clear. Tastes just like what you get out of the tap. Now, believe it or not, but there are priorities when you're surviving. One of them food, which I'm going to tell you about now, but the others are water, shelter, and rescue. Now, with food, insects are a very good source of food. They have a lot of protein. In fact, worms have 5 times more protein than beef. They're 80% protein. So are flies and witchetty grubs. Worms, because they'll be all dirty because they eat, stuff in the ground. What you do is that you boil them. You put them in a pot of boiling water and they purge themselves. Now what that is they throw up all of the insides and all the bad stuff, and all the bacteria. And what's left is just, pretty much just protein. Now you can also do the same thing with flies and witchetty grubs. In fact, the Aborigines that live in here used to eat witchetty grubs, and they were considered a bit of a delicacy, I guess. So if you're ever out in the bush and you need something to eat, don't hesitate to eat some insects. Okay, now, as I said before, worms are actually edible. Now, you find worms in the ground, obviously, but before or during, when it starts to rain, they actually come to the surface because underneath gets flooded and they don't want to drown. Now, we're going to try looking for some worms in here. Now there are a lot of creepy crawlies in here, so if you're desperate, you'll probably be able to live off of some of these bugs, because most bugs, contrary to popular belief, aren't actually poisonous. It's only a small number of them that are. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be many worms here, but I suppose if you keep on looking, you'll probably find several. Now what we showed you in the first episode was by using pine needles you can make a tea out of them, but another thing you can do with pine needles with these young green ones is that you can just eat them raw. Because what they do is they have a lot of moisture in them. See? So I'm going to take a couple of these and store them for later, because later I'm going to try and start a fire, and if I do, then I'll hope to have a nice warm cup of tea while I sit next to my fire. Alright guys, now another thing that's very important out in the wild that can be a matter of life and death is telling the weather. Now one of the things well, it's pretty much just basic knowledge. It's just you look at the sky and go, yeah, it's going to rain or it's not. And you can see with the dark clouds forming over at the moment, it's most likely going to rain. Whereas if it's blue sky or light clouds, then there won't be that much rain coming our way. But what you'll see is usually, have you heard of, pink sky at night, shepherds are light, red sky in the morning, sailor's warning. Now the reason why a pink sky at night isn't that bad is because dust particles that have been pushed up into the sun through into the cloud through like a high pressure system, and the sun shining through it makes a pink cloud. And whilst dark cloud is because it's heavier with all the water that's been evaporated and it's going to rain soon when it starts to condense. Now, what I've noticed here, if you look, is a mushroom. Now, even though no matter how starving you are, you should never eat a mushroom unless you're certain that it's not poisonous. Now, is a tip on finding mushrooms. I'm pretty sure that if it's yellow underneath, or if you scratch it with your fingernail, if it's yellow underneath, it's poisonous and you don't eat it. Oh, now just another thing that I want to talk to you about is just the Aborigines that used to live here, the Wurundjeri tribe to be exact. Now, what I find most interesting about them is that just their ability to survive out here in the bush without any outside help. Like, sure, they used to trade between the clans that lived around the area. They might trade some food or possum skins, but apart from that, they were on their own. They were in a semi-nomadic state where they just move from one point to another where the food source is, but they'd always leave a little bit behind to let it grow back so they could come back there later. Now, one of the hunting techniques they used to have was they find a patch of bush where the kangaroos were, and they'll light it on fire. And what that'll do is it'll make all the kangaroos run out into the open where they could lay in wait for them and trap them and hunt them and kill them. Now, this what they used to do and what they used to eat. Like, they'd eat wombats and possums and kangaroos. Like, whilst kangaroo is still a bit of a food source in Australia, wombats and and possums no one eats that now, and they'll be even considered weird, if not disgusting. But to them, it was what would be to us chicken and pork, or beef. And it was just their culture and what they used to eat. Or they'd eat, just food like yams. Yams was a big source of food for them. Yams are like a little thing that grows in the ground, sort of like a carrot, but it isn't a carrot, obviously. But they'd eat it, and they'd boil it or cook it, and most of their food cooking was similar to the European ways of life. But the difference between them and the Europeans is there was no sense of possession for them. Like, this spear was everyone's spear, and this tent was everyone's tent. No one owned anything. It was all just what belonged to the tribe. And that's what's different from the Europeans, how there'll be wars and wars and wars over who controls that land, or who controls that, or who controls this. Whereas to them it was nature, and nature controls everything, and they're just animals. And that's what I find most interesting about it. Alright, now we did show you about dandelions in the first episode. Now, one way you can identify them is obviously with their light white petals. Now, sometimes they have a milky white sap in them, like, see there. But now, the problem with the milky white sap is most plants with a milky white sap are poisonous. You should only eat dandelions. If you find any other plant that has a milky white sap, you shouldn't eat it. Another thing that you can do with dandelions is you can get the roots. Hold on. Yeah, you get the roots, and the roots, if you can gather enough of them, actually make a very nice cup of coffee. What you do is that you just, put them into a, well, I can't really get it in this one, but what you do is you get the roots and you put them into your cup of boiling water, and they don't really have much medicinal uses, but they just help you with morale, which, as I always say, is just very good out here when you're trying to survive, to keep up your morale. Alright, now one of the things that I also want to show you is just getting your bearings. Now obviously I showed you how to get your bearings by, you know, north by northeast and all the clocks and everything, but you don't really need to bother with that if there's, you know, a road just over there. So what you do is you should climb a tree. Now not many people know it, but there are actually techniques to tree climbing. Now what you want to try and do is have 3 points of contact whenever you climb a tree. So you go up the first one. Now you always grab, when you can, at the bottom of the branch where it's closest to the trunk, because that's the one with the most support. So my 3 points of contact. Now even now I'm getting a pretty good view of around. So already now I'm getting a pretty good view of just my surroundings. I'll go up just a little bit higher. I've got my 3 points of contact. Now, when you can avoid it, don't stand these little ones, unless of course you're close to the trunk. Now I'm getting up pretty high now, and I can see a lot of my surroundings. Now we have a pretty good view of our surroundings at the moment, as you can see through the camera. But you know, just use the techniques that we just showed you, the 3 points of contact. Yeah, you can see how high we are, and this is pretty good just to see what's in your immediate surroundings, if there's a road or a car or someone. But this is also very effective on a hill or a mountain, because you can get a better view because you've got more of a higher view up than what you have. So I don't know about you guys, but I'll be heading down now and off to my next scene. Alright, now whilst I do have a knife, what I'm going to show you now is how to make a rock knife or a stone knife. Now what you need to do is you get a small soft rock and you get a large stone, and what you need to do is just to break it. Now that rock's too hard. See, now they're too hard. Well, as you can see here, a rock like this has been split probably by falling off of a waterfall. Now you get it onto a sharp edge like this, and you just have to try and ground it down into a nice sharper point. Now this can take a while, but you probably have quite a lot of time when you're out here surviving. Alright, now what I've noticed here is vines wrapped around this tree. Now this will be very useful if you're building a shelter. So now that I'm thinking about building a shelter, which I'm going to be building in a different location, I should use this just as like binding material. Now you do like a bee cutting as we showed you in the first episode, and then you just have to try and untangle it, and you can use these as a great binding material for your structure, for your shelter. Okay, now if you look, we've made a snare. Now if you come closer, we have the supporting structure here, which is a big sharpened stick driven into the ground, and we tied the I tied the rope on, if you look, it's garden twine, just used to tying up tomato stalks and everything, but it's actually a very useful material for out in the wild. But yeah, so we tied it onto this stick and then on to these two, both are like a V shape, just to support the top of them, so they hang down like that. And what actually happens is the rabbit will come, or rabbit or whatever it is, will come down and it'll come through this and it'll get caught and it'll try to run away and it'll strangle itself through the gardening time. But just the thing that we need to tell you is that if you watch this and you think, oh, I'd like to do that, just don't do it if you're in a a populated environment, because dogs and cats get trapped in these and die, so they're actually illegal in most parts. So yeah, I'd just like to say that it isn't that properly built. Well, it's properly built, but it isn't built enough to cats and animals. This is just to show you how you can make something to cats and animals. And there's another thing while we're at it, just to point your attention to, is what I found here is a yabby hole. Now yabbies are like a crayfish or a lobster, and if you boil them, they're actually pretty nice to eat. Alright, now I've put my bike away and I'm just going to go build my shelter now. I'm building a debris shelter, as I'll instruct you about it later. But I've already set another snare, which is more properly built to catch an animal, and I'll be checking it in the morning. I'm in a patch of bush at the moment, which I can be pretty certain that there won't be many domestic, if any, domestic animals in the area, so it's safe to have a snare here. Oh, I've only got an hour and a half of light now. I need to start making the shelter quickly. I'm going to be making a debris shelter. What you do is you just get a piece of wood along like this, and you cover it with sticks on both ends. It's a lot like a lean-to shelter, which we showed you in the early episodes. Now we're going to be using this vine as sort of like a rope to lash it onto things. And I'm in a different location to what I was before. Alright guys, and as you see here of our debris shelter, I've been using twine up there, and I've had the stick go across the two trees, and then I have it coming down, and then we have the sticks on both sides. Now what I'm doing now is I'm going to finish off this with the rest of the stick, and I'm going to collect some ferns to put over and then under as an insulator. Alright, now as you can see, the shelter is really coming together. Now what I'm doing now, I'm just getting branches with leaves and just piling them on top to form just a roof in case it rains, which I don't really think will happen anytime soon. And now what we're going to be doing after that is to get stuff like this, just ferns, and we're going to make a floor underneath for insulation. Alright, the shelter's now finished. We've got leaves that we cut down over the top, and we've got two supporting beams across there, just in case one of them fails during the night. Now, if you look inside our makeshift shelter, we have ferns and as insulation, and it's got a roof over the top, and you can still see through, but it's just like a little bit of insulation to keep our body heat in here where we sleep in this way. And if you look out there, it's just nothing. So all we have to do now is just find something as a door for the shelter. Alright guys, I'm in my bush shelter now. Now I've got my ferns underneath, which are keeping me rather warm. I'm a bit tired at the moment after our long ride today, so I'm probably going to try and get some night's sleep. I thought I heard something in my snare before, but I checked and it hadn't been said, there was nothing yet. So I'm just going to try and get some sleep. The problem is that the water that I collected before is a little bit, well, is pretty low. So I'm a bit thirsty at the moment, but I just want to ration the last bit of my water. So yeah, I'll just try and get some sleep and I'll see you guys in the morning. Alright guys, now it did actually start raining, but what I did manage to do was just to get some some more debris. Like, we got this real heavy leaves plant and we covered it over, so then it's a lot less holy than what it was before. Like, if you looked at it before, it had massive holes in it. We've got a bit wet now, but we're just trying to get some sleep now. I didn't really even get a wink of sleep before, but I'll just try to get some sleep now and probably see you in the morning. Alright guys, now what? Another thing that I did was I made a rain trap. Now what it is a plastic bag going into a hole that we dug, and just like rocks and stones and logs on the end of it to keep from blowing away, and the rain will fall into the bottom of it. Now I won't show you now, but in the morning I'll show you it and just see if we got any water during the night. Okay guys, now I'm standing just outside my shelter. It's about 1 AM and it started raining a couple hours ago, but now it's just drizzling. As you can see, you can probably see my breath. It's pretty cold out here. I reckon it's probably, I don't know, maybe 10 degrees, which is pretty cold. My clothes are all wet from the rain, so I'm losing quite a lot of body heat, and I had to fix my shelter during the night because when it started raining it wasn't sufficient enough to keep out the rain. So I've just, I've done that, and I'm just trying to make it through the night. Alright guys, this is day 2 of Into the Wilderness Part 3. I've just spent a very cold and uncomfortable night out here in our bush shelter. Unfortunately, I misjudged the depth of our ferns. You should have made them a bit deeper, because after a while they just flattened out and didn't provide any insulation at all. Also, the roof could have been better. It started raining halfway through the night and woke me up. So I had to work fast to get more leaves on top. Now I'm just going to check my rain trap that I set, and if we haven't got anything, then I'll at least show you how to make a rain trap like it. Alright, now we haven't actually got anything this time. What all it is just a plastic bag through a hole that we dug in the ground, and you just have weights on each end. And the idea is that when it rains, the rain will come down into the bottom of the hole, and hopefully you can just use as a little bit of water. That's another thing that I want to talk to you about, is just damp clothes, because when I slept in my debris shelter, I was wearing damp clothes, and what's the problem with that is that you actually lose a lot of body heat through that. So if you have a fire, just try and dry out your clothes, because you lose a lot of body heat. Like, you probably wouldn't think of it now, but you do. What I can't stress about enough is insulation. Now, insulation is actually a very important factor when you're out in the bush, and can be seriously misjudged, as what I did with my shelter. Now, when you insulate your shelter, you have to have about, at least 30 centimeters of insulation underneath you, and you want proper insulation on top of you on the roof. Now, it's just lucky that we weren't that far away and that we were only spending one night in the bush, because if we were spending more than one night and it got colder than what it did, it could have been pretty catastrophic for us out in our Into the Wilderness team. So I just really want to stress to you about insulation and how important it is, and that when you're building a shelter, that's one of the main things you should think about. What you see here is a blackberry bush. Now, blackberry bush is actually very useful out here in the wild, because what you can do with them is you get their roots, and they can help to cure diarrhea. Now, in the bush, you usually get diarrhea after maybe the second day. It's just something that happens. There are quite a few remedies to help stop it or fix it, and one of them is blackberries. Another one is also eating charcoal, Charcoal also helps. So what you do, be careful of the prickles, of course. But you just find the root. And I'm going to use some of the water that I collected earlier. And you put them in and you boil them into the water. And then you eat it. And what it does is, it just makes sort of like a tea, I guess, that you can use to cure your diarrhea. Now, one of the things in the bush is that you can become disorientated very easily. Now, if you look at this undergrowth that we're in, and it's thick, now what happens with some people is that they veer off a track with no compass and no sense of direction, and they just lose where they've gone. They don't know if behind them is the road, and most of the time they walk across the road but they don't actually realise it. Usually if it's a dirt track, because they're that disorientated. Now, one of the things you need to do in the bush when you're like this is that you just need to stop and you just need to relax every once in a while, because when you're surviving, it's all about getting out and getting back alive, but you really do need to just stop every once in a while and just relax. Now, one of the things also in this bush is you can find game trails. Now, there's none around us at the moment. What a game trail really is just a track that animals walk on. And you can look at the trackings and you can just see if there is any footprints, and if there are, you can usually tell how long they've been there. And one of the tricks that the natives in Africa, I think it was, used to do is they'll look at the footprint that the animal stepped on, and judging by the length of the grass and how flattened it is, that's how long the animal has been there, and it gives them a rough estimate. Now, what I can see here is a bit of a hole. It's a rabbit hole, actually. Now, as I showed you in the first episode, you can set a snare there, and there's some chance that you will get the rabbit, because the rabbit will probably be in the hole, or it'll come out and it'll just run out and get caught in the snare, and it's all over, I guess. Alright guys, just from me and Nick, my cameraman, just thank you for watching this third episode of Into the Wilderness, and I hope that you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making it. So until next time, just see you later, goodbye, and thanks for watching.
Okay, this is how we do our awesome bike scenes.
Now, I just have to say that doing the bike scene is by far the hardest part of Into the Wilderness. One of the main problems that we had was just the wind resistance.
Like last time we did this, the bloody wind just whoosh, so you couldn't even hear him.
Yeah, you couldn't hear how to like shout it. Anyway, Nick made a wind thing.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You go on my left, actually go on my right. On my right, on my right.
Now what he made is just a wind...
It's left on. Oh fuck, big truck, stop.
Hold on. Yeah, it's just like a wind thing made out of a toilet paper roll. But it gets the job done because it stops...
He's turning. I gave him thumbs up.
It just stops the wind from getting into the microphone.
Yes.
But yeah.
This bit hands over, like you can't see it because I made it awesomely awesome. And this bit's for the hand strap, and it goes over like that, and it stops the wind from getting in because it's like this bit goes over the mic. But you don't even need two toilet rolls for it. Don't lose it. But we're on our way home now, so
Yeah.
yeah, goodbye.
See you later.